Even though Muslims believe that the pristine message of Jesus Christ has been lost in history, a position that is readily admitted by biblical scholars themselves, we can check the Revised Standard Version RSV preface. For example, Muslims like myself who are into the comparative study of religions show a vested interest in the New Testament, and also as do the Jewish scholars of comparative religion, because of the central piece in the Abrahamic faith, which is that God is one, and that this God is not a human being, and that this God is nothing compared to anything in the physical universe. The current Christian theology holds that Jesus Christ is an incarnated God. He is God in human form. However, not all Christians hold on to this position, as we have some Christians called Unitarians who, though reading the same Bible, the same New Testament, do not come to that same conclusion. What is my response on this? My response is simply that no single verse of the Bible demonstrates that Jesus is God Almighty. And here I'm using the word God Almighty. And there's no place that Jesus himself said that he is God. Of course, it's easy for us to say, you know what, that is simply my bias because I am a Muslim, of course, and this is what I will say, that of course Jesus is not God. But at the end of the day, we should listen to each other and we should discuss. Now, I'm just going to give us one example to illustrate this, and it's a big example. An example with what we call a high Christology that describes Jesus in the very highest, which is the example in the Gospel of John chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? And people quote this and say, you know what, this is it, Jesus Christ is called, he is the Word who is God, and he is the Word who became flesh in verse 14, right? However, just a preface to this is that in the Bible, the rhetorics of the Bible gives the permission that human beings that have been given authority could be called God. So, for example, in the book of Exodus chapter 7 verse 1, Moses is called Elohim. God says he's going to make Moses a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron shall be his prophet. And 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4, we are told that the devil is the god of this world, and both of them are translated with the small g, right? Okay, now it's the same thing in this case. Jesus is called God, but how do we know whether it is the big God or the small God that we are supposed to translate it as? So it depends on what you already believe, and this is the reason why we see Trinitarian translations translating this as capital G for Jesus, for God, and why the Unitarian translations translate the small g and the word is a God. So where lies the true position? The true position is when you read further the whole context of the book of John. When you go further, John chapter 1 verse 18, he says that no man has ever seen God. The only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father has declared him as a real God. So you can find this translation in the Amplified Bible, because this verse has a manuscript variant. Some say the unique Son, some say the begotten God. So the Amplified Bible uses both the unique God or the begotten God. So Jesus here is said to be the begotten God. He is God. However, he is God who proceeded, who was generated from another God who is the Father, right? And we know when you come to our current definition of God, God should be that very being which nothing greater can be imagined. Nothing greater can be more than God. So in this case, it's only the Father that fits this criteria, and not the Word, as Jesus Christ, who was begotten from the Father. Now let's see other verses of the book of John. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son." So there is God who gave his only begotten Son. So you can see the distinctiveness. There's God on one hand, and there is his only begotten Son, which is just who was begotten from God, right? So we know that the one who was begotten cannot be greater or be eternal, just as the one who begot him in the first place. Okay, in the same book of John chapter 6 verse 57, it says that I live because of the Father. So Jesus says he is living, he's alive because of the Father. John 5 verse 30 says, I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my will, but the will of my Father. In John 14 verse 28, a verse that has been quoted by many of the church fathers before the Council of Nicaea, it says that my Father is greater than I. Very explicit clear and straight to the point. In John chapter 10 verse 29, it says, my Father is greater than all. In John 17 verse 6, it says, this is life eternal, that they might know you, the only true God, who the Father, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. So the Father is the only true God, and Jesus Christ is the one whom the Father has sent. And in John chapter 20 verse 17, he says to Mary, go to my brethren and tell them that I go to my Father and your God and my God. So Jesus in this gospel has a God above him, and we know that God does not have a God above him. So in the real sense, God with a capital G, Jesus is nowhere in the Bible described as God Almighty, that's with a capital G, or that he is equal with the Father at any point in time. So this is just one example. In my subsequent episode, I'm going to give you more examples to demonstrate that there's no verse in the Bible that shows that Jesus is God, and this is actually an erroneous position. Till next time, may the peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon us all.